All right, congratulations, friends. You guys have survived week one. Great job so far. And I'm with you. Some of you were up working late tonight, and I'm going to be doing that on Tuesday nights. I'll be checking in to see how the week went, grading assignments, and then looking to give you some feedback and also just some heads up for things to expect for the week to come. And I'm home, and we're rearranging in our house, so my wife is actually sleeping on our couch, so I'm with the door shut in the back room. Just making a quick video for you guys. I wanted to say I am thrilled with how this has started so far. I can't often say that it's fun to grade, but I really enjoyed grading tonight and checking out just some of the work that you've done. Your discussion posts were it's a really, really good start, and that was a pretty challenging question, and I appreciated the honesty that you guys showed and your willingness to dialogue with each other and to ask some questions, and quite a few of you said, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way before, so I really appreciated your willingness to think outside the box. And as far as the discussion post itself, especially that second one on the Mesopotamian religion, would encourage you guys to continue to think like that if we want to be historically accurate, the reality is the Code of Hammurabi, the Mesopotamian text, did come first, and we would be bad historians to just say, no, they didn't. The Christians, the Bible influences everything else. Well, you know what? We could be upset by it, or we could choose to say, well, how do I, instead of being reactionary, how do I respond in an appropriate and a respectful way and say, well, you know what, I'm encouraged. And Sam and Tracy, you guys kind of pointed this out a little bit. I'm actually encouraged. I feel like the fact that the Bible is written in its time, and that it has truth from that time and things and principles that other groups understood, going back to Adam and Eve and then Noah and his descendants. They would have known a lot of those things, and so we should be encouraged that God is still and always was active in revealing us truth. Now, at the same time, you guys cautioned about truth being sometimes difficult to nail down, and Satan's smart, right? The very first lie in Genesis 3, Satan doesn't just come out and give a blatant lie. He comes out and gives part of the truth. And then he questions a little piece of God's full truth. And so we can look at the Code of Hammurabi and say there's some truth in there, right? An eye for an eye. That's a good principle. That's what justice is. That describes how God designed things. But, right, the Bible goes further. And so we see, as you guys reference, kind of the rest of the story. So don't be afraid. And again, be encouraged, because God is such a good communicator that he was able to say, well, here's the history, here's the culture, here's who Israel is going to grow up with, and so here's how I'm going to communicate to them in a way that they will understand. And Sam referenced Deuteronomy and the Hittite suzerain vassal treaty. What a great way to communicate, and you're going to see things like that all through Scripture. So be encouraged. We don't have to be afraid of it, but we do want to be good historians and say, well, no, the Bible didn't come first, right? The Pentateuch didn't, but we don't have to then apologize and say, well, it must be any less valid. One of the things you guys pointed out in your discussion posts and then just some of the other answers I saw is this idea of bias. And one of the things that we talk a lot about in class for the regular classes, and we're going to talk about it here, is we are biased. And you guys probably hopefully watched that first video. We need to grow in our understanding of our own bias, where we're coming from, where others are coming from, learn to discern it without just crushing it or without refusing to listen to them first. So would definitely encourage us to continue to think about that. And then, as I said, right, are we reacting before we actually listen to what other people are saying? And then are we responding in a Christ-like way? Your journals on History of the Eyes of Faith, I thought you guys did a really great job pointing out, right, this honest Western Christian history textbook and how it's supposed to be used. And one of the things Ronald Wells says, right, is we have this extra lens of faith, and he doesn't say we see it and they don't. He just says they see a lot of the same things. We're studying, right? We're studying history. We're studying the things that are observable, but we have this extra set of lenses, right? And so the answer isn't, well, you're just an idiot, you don't get it. It's maybe to take off your lenses and say, hey, like, try these on. Like, look at it. Look, here's another way of viewing these events and these things of the past. So offering that lens of faith and recognizing we don't want to be overly sure that we've got it figured out 100% and everybody else is wrong. No, he says there's no room for a spirit of triumphalism. That doesn't persuade people. That just makes people angry. But he says, instead of looking to praise and blame and say, I've got it right, with a spirit of humility, right, come before them and say, okay, well, how can I help? How can we be more clear on this? Because the ultimate goal of knowing things isn't just to keep it to ourselves. We don't want to be knowledgeable and puffed up. We want to be loving and edifying and building up others. Again, crisis driving the flow of history is really important as a concept to understand. And you guys gave some really good examples of that. And just bear that in mind as we look through history. We're going to study a lot of crises. In fact, one of the things that we remember about history is the wars. If we were outlining American history or world history, we remember the wars. Why? Because that's when crises occurred. That's when worldviews were rocked. That's when people started to write and process. And so it's monumental in history. So just look for that pattern. As far as just getting practical, some of you guys had some questions about the format and how things work. So you've got a pretty good idea. Discussion post, at least one a week. I don't know if you'll have two any other time. And then you'll have journal, unit quiz, and you'll have the required videos to watch and things. And there'll be test questions on some of those things. So you'll want to check those out. And then I've also got some additional materials that some of them are fun, just kind of interesting. If your interest is piqued in something, I would encourage you to check those out. But read the unit overview at the beginning of here, week 2 on the Greeks, and say, okay, well, what is coming? What do I expect? And I'll kind of lay out an order of this is how I would recommend that you do it. You don't have to do it exactly this way, but this will kind of give you the material you'll need in a prescribed order, and it'll kind of build on itself. But yeah, just some final thoughts. Again, with the discussion posts, ask each other questions. Don't be afraid to disagree and to think outside the box. And you guys did a great job of being respectful and loving towards each other, but don't be afraid to be honest and to really challenge each other. It's good for each other. So we're going to talk about the Greeks here in week 2, and I'm excited to kind of see some of your responses there. And just as we go along, I encourage you to think, am I just reacting in frustration, or am I actually thinking about how I ought to respond with the things that I'm learning and knowing, so that ultimately we can share and represent Christ well. So I'm having a blast so far. And again, if you guys have any questions or issues with Schoology or anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I look forward to learning more with you here in week 2. Have a great night. God bless.